There was a song written in the late 1960s entitled, "Is That All There Is?" And it was sung by Peggy Lee. The song was written from the perspective of someone who is disillusioned with life. Listen to the lyrics of the second verse. "And when I was 12 years old, my father took me to a circus, the greatest show on earth. There were clowns and elephants and dancing bears, and a beautiful lady in pink tights flew above our heads. And so I sat there watching the marvelous spectacle. I had the feeling that something was missing. I don't know what, but when it was over, I said to myself, is that all there is to a circus?" And then the chorus gets even more disturbing. It says, "Is that all there is? Is that all there is? If that's all there is, my friends, then let's keep dancing. Let's break out the booze and have a ball if that's all there is." The first verse described how her house burned down and she stood there thinking, is that all there is? And the third verse described how the love of her life abandoned her, but she keeps on living even though she thought she would die. And then the last verse echoes the sentiments in the previous verses, and it gets even more depressing. It says this, "I know what you must be saying to yourselves. If that's the way she feels about it, why doesn't she just end it all? Oh no, for not me. I'm in no hurry for that final disappointment. For I know just as well as I'm standing here talking to you, when that final moment comes and I'm breathing my first breath, I'll be saying to myself, is that all there is? Is that all there is? If that's all there is, my friends, then let's keep dancing. Let's break out the booze and have a ball if that's all there is." See, some hear this song and think it's sung by a woman who's simply just given up. She's tried to create a sense of feeling in her life, but it hasn't worked. She's tried to find fulfillment in events and things and other people, and she's found that she has not been able to cure her longing for more. I don't know about you, but I've wondered the same thing. I've found myself wanting more, saying I get to a point where I should be happy, I should be pleased, I should find fulfillment, and I'm thinking, is that all there is? One of the things that I remember as a sports fan is 2010, my favorite college team, Duke, won the national championship. And within minutes, I'm arguing on Facebook with someone about how we're going to win the next year's championship too. I couldn't even sit and bask in the joy of my team winning. It was always next year. It was always, well, we've got a better team coming back. They didn't win the next year, by the way, but is that all there is? You reach the mountaintop, you reach the pinnacle, is that it? And this is the key question for all of us, Christian or not. Is this life all that there is? Do we have anything to look forward to? Or is this, what we see around us in the world today, is that all there is? And how you approach this question is important. And this is tied to another important question. What is the meaning of life? This is kind of the whole purpose of the book of Ecclesiastes. What is the meaning and purpose of life? And this is why you're here today, I hope. Not because I have the answers, by the way, but because the Bible does. You're here because you want to figure things out. You have a deep longing in your heart that this life, what we experience here and now, is not all that there is. There has to be more. You want to escape this sense of hopelessness and give you something to cling to. Secular humanism tries to offer this. It's a popular worldview today. It says that even if there is a God, it really doesn't matter. What you see is all that there is, and so your purpose here is to live, and while you're here, to make the world a better place. It doesn't matter what happens after you die, so focus on the here and now. Postmodernism is probably the most popular viewpoint today, and it says that all points are equally valid. So what works for you is right for you, and what works for you is right for you. It doesn't matter until you say that that's wrong, and then now you are the only one who's wrong. But ultimately, right and wrong are social constructs. There's nothing definitive in life. Both of those come back to the point that you're just some kind of cosmic accident. no purpose, no meaning for your existence. The Bible addresses this. You've heard this. Claiming to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man and birds and animals and creeping things. See, there are questions that we should all be asking, and it's something that we should all be searching for. But we know that many people will just do what Peggy Lee did in the song and simply give up trying to find meaning in anything. They come to the conclusion that life is meaningless. There is no use in trying to find some ultimate overarching purpose, and so whatever I feel like doing becomes the primary aim. Continue to collect, continue to gain, continue to work harder, and just keep piling and piling on. And what we're seeing in Ecclesiastes is that does nothing for you. Immediately, yes, it may make you feel better in the present, right now. But what happens when that wears off? What happens when you need something else to fix that feeling of hopelessness? And if you've read the book of Ecclesiastes with us up until chapter 2, you probably think the author feels the same way. He's given a bleak picture of humanity. And he's told how he's filled his life with things. And he continues to say this in chapter 2. Now, just as you wouldn't read a letter and stop after the first couple paragraphs, keep with us. There is a solution to this. There is a conclusion to the book of Ecclesiastes that gives us hope. All of this bleakness and this darkness, yes, there's a point and a purpose to it. So stay with us. So let's read Ecclesiastes chapter 2, beginning in verse 1, going through verse 11. The preacher says, I said in my heart, come now, I will test you with pleasure. Enjoy yourself. But behold, this was also vanity. I said of laughter, it is mad, and of pleasure, what use is it? I searched with my heart how to cheer my body with wine, my heart still guiding me with wisdom, and how to lay hold on folly till I might see what was good for the children of man to do under heaven during the few days of their life. I made great works. I built houses and planted vineyards for myself. I made gardens and parks and planted in them all kinds of fruit trees. I made myself pools from which the water of the forest of growing trees. I bought male and female slaves and had slaves who were born in my house. I also had great possessions of herds and flocks, more than any who had been before me in Jerusalem. I also gathered for myself silver and gold and treasures of kings and provinces. I've got singers, both men and women, and many concubines to the delight of the sons of man. So I became great and surpassed all who were before me in Jerusalem, and also my wisdom remained with me. And whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I kept my heart from no pleasure, for my heart found pleasure in all my toil, and this was my reward for all my toil. Then I considered all that my hands had done, and the toil I had expended in doing it, and behold, all was vanity, and a striving after wind, and there was nothing to be gained under the sun. He tried to fill his life with every form of pleasure that he could think of. Pleasure from things, from work, from possessions, from all of the accolades that he earned and the power. And see, here's the thing. Deep down, I think this is in all of us. We don't have to be Solomon. We don't have to be the richest man in history. We want some of these things. And you say, well, why do we want those? Because they're not bad in and of themselves. Right? Having money or possessions or having authority or having a claim, none of those things are inherently wrong when they're viewed properly. See, this is what sin does. Sin messes everything up. It takes something good and it turns it into something bad. It takes God's created order and contorts it and twists it and to make it into something idolatrous. It twists God's design and create something monstrous inside of us. Our desire for the Creator becomes a desire for His creation. This is what Ecclesiastes has been saying to this point. It's what the author of the passage says today. Pleasure is the feeling of satisfaction and enjoyment of a job well done. Except when that becomes our primary focus. And maybe you haven't heard a preacher say this. Sin is enjoyable. Why else would we do it? Think about the food that you hate the most. If would you do you enjoy? No one enjoys eating that, right? Whatever it may be. I remember as a kid, my mom would do the pot roast, or she would make me eat carrots, and I hated carrots with a passion. And so I'd plug my nose when I would eat them, mostly because I was a jerk to her. But I would plug my nose trying to get rid of the taste of those carrots or the broccoli if I couldn't dip it into cheese, right? Why is it that I loved pizza and ice cream and chocolate? Because they tasted good, right? I don't do something that makes me miserable. I do things because it makes me feel good. And sin is the definition of that, right? It's that instantaneous kind of feeling of some kind of enjoyment or pleasure. Someone cuts you off on the road, and you yell at them or you give them a signal, not your turn signal. You do that because it gratifies you in the immediate sense. But when they start following you and they start screaming back at you, do you see what it does? It's not pleasurable at that point. It gives you this immediate gratification, and then it quickly wears off. And that's what the preacher here in Ecclesiastes is saying. This is the difference. It's important to remember this, that finding your chief pleasure in anything but God will lead to your ultimate suffering and your hurt. Because our purpose is not to gather more. Our purpose is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. This is why we are created. You want purpose? That's your purpose. It's not so that we could become hedonists and we live for one pleasurable moment after another, but rather that we seek out our primary pleasure in God and God alone. His design is that we find our pleasure in Him and that we enjoy Him with all that we have. And this message is what's coming through in Ecclesiastes. That Solomon, or the preacher, did everything imaginable. And he said it's like catching the wind. It's pointless. All of the things that he could gather and that he could collect, nothing. Worth nothing. They don't help. And he gives a list of things that he did and that his accomplishments. I mean, this is a resume here. The first thing he said is he found pleasure in things. He tried to fill his life with alcohol, hoping that it would bring some peace and to ease whatever pain that he may have felt. He tries to indulge in pleasure without being consumed by it. This wasn't him getting drunk, but instead he was looking to the bottle to fix whatever ailed him. Now, some of you are maybe wondering, what does Ryan think about alcohol? It doesn't matter what I think, honestly. But the truth is that there's a difference between going to vodka versus a glass of water, right? You're not going to get in a car and run over someone after you drink a glass of water, right? The propensity is far greater when you go to the bottle for something. Now, the Apostle Paul even says that, hey, drink a little wine. So we know that that's not sinful. But in excess, when we look to something other than God to fill our lives and fill our purpose, that's where the problem comes. It's a dangerous path, and this is what the preacher is saying, that, man, he had all the alcohol that he could ever want, and it never really fixed anything for him. It didn't last. It eased the pain a bit, for sure, but it didn't fix it. It masks it. I was dealing with some stuff this week and some pain, and the hope was if I could just keep downing aspirin and ibuprofen and Tylenol, that I'll feel better. But any doctor will tell you, yeah, in the immediate moment, yes, that could help. But it doesn't fix the infection that you have. It doesn't fix the problem that you have. It masks it. And that's what he's saying, is that, yeah, he drank, but it didn't fix anything. And then he switches in verses 4 through 7 to show the danger of finding pleasure in your work. Look at all the things he did. He built houses, he planted vineyards, he made gardens and parks full of trees, he built pools and aqueducts to move the water around. I mean, this is a massive amount of work. None of us have done all of the things that he did, but we're susceptible to the problems that he encountered. I don't know if you studied Solomon, but he did a lot. He oversaw the work of the temple that took 7 years to build. His main palace took 13 years to complete. That's 20 years of watching to make sure that the work was done precisely. He probably didn't lay a stone, but he oversaw it. He was in charge of all of this. Now, you may not have built a castle or a temple. I don't think any of us have. But there's a sense of accomplishment. You do something, whether it's installing a light fixture or fixing a car or building a deck, whatever it is, and you finish and you take a step back and you admire your work. There's a sense of accomplishment. You take pride in it. Well, Solomon was responsible for overseeing the building of the temple and a palace. And he felt this pressure, and once he saw that it was done, he could stand back and admire it. But then he almost instantly, at least the vibe that we get from here, and this is speculation on my end, my thinking is that he said, okay, well, what's next? And the reason why I say that is because highly successful CEOs, entrepreneurs, people who are building things don't just sit back and enjoy what they built. They finish and they move on to the next project. What can I do next? What is the next thing? Where can I keep going? How can I keep moving forward? And we know that because if they sat back and relaxed, they'd be run over by the next guy who's not stopping. The preacher in verses 4 through 7 shows that all of the accomplishments he achieved, they were not enough to bring him peace. He built castles and temples and parks and aqueducts, and he had all the scientists that came through, and he built everything that they told him to build, and yet it still didn't bring him peace. He also sought out pleasure from his possessions. The entire chapter of 1 Kings 7 gives us great detail of the palace and the furnishings on the inside. And then in 1 Kings 10, we see a description of his great wealth. I want to read this in a second, but in 1 year, he collected over 600 talents of gold, and 1 talent of gold today is $1.5 million. It's more than $800 million in one single year. 1 Kings 10, and I'm going to change the measurements here to actually make sense to us today, but 1 Kings 10 says this: King Solomon made 200 large shields of beaten gold. 15 pounds of gold went into each shield, and he made 300 shields of beaten gold. 2 pounds of gold went into each shield, and the king put them in the house of the forest of Lebanon. The king also made a great ivory throne and overlaid it with the finest gold. The throne had 6 steps, and the throne had a round top, and on each of the seat, each side of the seat were armrests and 2 lions standing beside the armrests, while 12 lions stood there, one on each of a step of the 6 steps. The like of it was never made in any kingdom. All King Solomon's drinking vessels were of gold, and the vessels of the house of the forest of Lebanon were pure gold. None were of silver. Silver was not considered anything in the days of Solomon. For the king had a fleet of ships of Tarshish at sea with the fleet of Hiram. Once every 3 years, the fleet of the ships of Tarshish used to come bringing gold, silver, ivory, apes, and peacocks. So here's the biggest question we have. Where are my peacocks? Apes and peacocks? Like, I want some of those. Like, he had a zoo. He had peacocks and apes and silver and gold. His cups were made of gold because silver wasn't good enough. And then skip down to verse 26 in this chapter. And Solomon gathered together chariots and horsemen. He had 1,400 chariots and 12,000 horsemen, whom he stationed in the chariot cities with the king in Jerusalem. And the king made silver as common in Jerusalem as stone, and he made cedar as plentiful as the sycamore and the shephelah. And Solomon's import of horses was from Egypt and Kue. And the king's traders received them from Kue at a price. A chariot could be imported from Egypt for 15 pounds of silver and a horse for 4 pounds. And so through the king's traders, they were exported to all the kings of the Hittites and the kings of Syria. Wealthy beyond anything you can imagine. Today, the richest man in the world is worth more than 600 billion. One study I've seen of Solomon was that he was worth 2.1 trillion in today's dollars. Like unimaginable wealth. Just if that number to me, I can't, I need something visual to see that because I don't know a trillion of anything. And so if you were to count from 1 to 1 million, it would take you 12 days nonstop. To count to 1 billion would take you 31 years. To count to 1 trillion would take you 30,000 years. Massive. Maybe put it this way. If you had a stack of $1 million in $100 bills, that would reach about to your chest. $1 billion would reach higher than any building on the planet. $1 trillion would reach hundreds of miles into space. What did he get from all that? See, we say, well, I'd like to try it. Like to not have any want or any need, snap your fingers and make anything happen. I'd like to give it a shot. An endless vacation, binge watch your favorite show on end. But how many of you realize that you'd be so miserable? You'd reach the highest level attainable, and you would realize that when you get there, you're all alone and you're still not satisfied. You had whatever you wanted, whenever you wanted. But this passage tells us deep down, we already know that it's never enough. It's never enough. Along with his wealth, Solomon was esteemed. So not only did he have everything that he wanted, he also had people coming to him and asking for wisdom that he had. Leaders from all over the world came. 1 Kings 10 again, verse 23. Thus King Solomon excelled all the kings of the earth in riches and in wisdom. And the whole earth sought the presence of Solomon to hear his wisdom, which God had put into his mind. Every one of them brought his present articles of silver and gold, garments, myrrh, spices, horses, and mules, so much year by year. Leaders of the world came to him for advice. Verse 9 of our text today, the preacher writing for Solomon, or Solomon himself, said, "So I became great and surpassed all who were before me in Jerusalem. All my wisdom remained with me." The queen of Sheba even came to visit Solomon in 1 Kings 10. Listen to this. Now when the queen of Sheba heard the fame of Solomon concerning the name of the Lord, she came to test him with hard questions. She came to Jerusalem with a very great retinue, with camels bearing spices and very much gold and precious stones. And when she came to Solomon, she told him all that was on her mind. And Solomon answered all her questions. There was nothing hidden from the king that could not be explained to her. And when the queen of Sheba had seen all the wisdom of Solomon, the house that he had built, the food of his table, the seating of his officials, and the attendance of his servants, their clothing, his cupbearers, and his burnt offerings that he offered at the house of the Lord, there was no more breath in her. Solomon took her breath away. She had no words to explain the greatness of everything that she experienced. I don't know how that feels. Sometimes you have theological questions and you might say, well, let's go ask Ryan. See what Ryan thinks about this. And if you have done that, maybe you should rethink that. But if you have done that, you've probably gotten an answer from me like, well, I don't know. Well, give me some time to research it. I'm not a wealth of wisdom and knowledge, but Solomon seemed to have all the right answers. He had a high IQ mixed with supernatural wisdom. It says here that God gave him this wisdom. But even this wasn't good enough. He still was unfulfilled. He needed more. And so in verse 10, we see the last thing that he tries. Pleasure from immediacy. And what I mean by that is Solomon never had to wait for anything. He snapped his fingers and got whatever he wanted. Verse 10, and whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I kept my heart from no pleasure, for my heart found pleasure in all my toil. and this was my reward for all my toil. In essence, he is like a child who was never told no. Don't shout out names, but we all know people like that, right? They grow up with the silver spoons. They never had to work for anything. They never had to deal with a lack of anything. They get whatever they want whenever they want. They are spoiled. Solomon never had to deal with that. He never had to wait for anything. So would that make you happy? Again, wouldn't be a bad thing to try. But would it give you a sense of purpose or a reason to live? See, I think it would place us in the same spot that the preacher's in. Unable to fill our hearts with joy. See, again, the problem is not in the things. It's not in the things. Nothing is sinful so much about these things. The problem was that he was chasing after those to fill his heart. He was trying to find his ultimate purpose in stuff or in others. We see this in verse 11. He wraps it up and he says, "Then I considered all that my hands had done and all the toil I had expended in doing it, and behold, all was vanity and a striving after wind. And there was nothing to be gained under the sun." It's echoing the theme of the book, all is vanity. And I know you want to see this end. You want to see the preacher come to the realization that he's found his purpose. But he's just like we are. He's trying everything he can to accomplish this longing. And he's found that no amount of money or women or power or acclaim or people bowing at his feet can accomplish this. All it does is give him more problems. He's drowning and he's clinging. He doesn't even realize it. He's clinging to the things that are weighing him down in the first place. And he keeps going back to the things that are killing him, spiritually speaking. And this is where I think this is all pointing us to. The gospel shows us that we cannot work for our salvation. We can't do enough to please God. We can't gain enough or be good enough to please God. This is why the preacher struggled for so long. He didn't recognize this, at least not at first. He was doing all of these things without God. He didn't see his need for forgiveness. He didn't see his need for a Savior. All he knew that he was collecting more stuff, and that was the best way to find happiness. Again, this is so relevant because isn't that what everything in the world tells us to do now? You'll only be happy if you get that new car. You'll find true happiness when you get your dream home. You'll find happiness when you can get married or when you have kids. You'll find happiness when you do this or that. That's what Solomon was doing. He kept gaining and gaining and gaining and receiving, and he was left every single time empty. It's because he wasn't doing it for the right reasons. He didn't have the motives that we need to have of glorifying God in his heart. See, the gospel teaches us that more stuff is not the solution. The solution is only found in the forgiveness of our sins. And so contrary to what some would have us believe, salvation is not the same thing as pleasure. Any of you who are suffering right now and who follow after Jesus can tell you that very distinctly, that the suffering that you're experiencing now is not this kind of idea of living a pleasurable life. You would trade almost anything to get rid of that suffering. But your joy is found far deeper than that, isn't it? God's plan is not to have Christians rich and healthy and happy. If you are, praise God for that. But that's not our main plan. That is not the reason why God has us part of his family. If we work to find pleasure in things and experiences and other people, we're going to end up in the same boat that the preacher in Ecclesiastes felt, and the same way Peggy Lee felt when she asked, "Is this all that there is?" Because if it's so, if that's all that there is, if this life of misery that so many of us have experienced, and the pain and the brevity of life and the suffering that we experience and the hurt and the trauma, and add up all of those things that have been negative influences in your life, if this is all that there is, we would end up in the same place as the preacher. It's catching the wind. There's no purpose in this. If we're some cosmic accident, there is no purpose in this. So go ahead and live your life for pleasure, because you only live once. So go enjoy it. Do whatever you can. But the Bible says something very different. It says this isn't everything. In fact, this is all nothing in comparison to the riches of God in Christ Jesus. Nothing. So here's a question for you. Where is your heart? Are you seeking after material things that are here today and gone tomorrow? Maybe it's deeper than that. Maybe your primary mission in life now is to leave a legacy. All of those things are noble. But they can't be your primary aim, because that's not what you were created for. You were created by God to glorify Him and enjoy Him forever. That is your purpose, and that is your mission. So shift your eyes away from your circumstances and from your happiness, and instead move them solely and squarely on the throne of Christ. This joy and the contentment that Solomon was seeking after can only be found when we lay down our crowns at the foot of Christ. This is what true joy is. It's not in our circumstances. It's not in the immediate moment. It is not in gathering things. It is not in living a pleasurable life or a pain-free life. It is only when we surrender everything that we have and give them to Jesus and say that He is the ruler, He is the King, He is sovereign over us. And so my prayer this morning is that we all do that we all live in light of the promises of God and not seek after those things that cause us so many problems. To not seek after the things that weigh us down. Instead, release them and go after Christ. Would you pray with me?